order to conclude these days of the summit, I would like to look to the future. And since we represent different capacities here, we have scholars, journalists, musicians, producers, radio people, I would like to ask 2 or 3 simple questions and then hear your answers or comments. All the questions will be about what we need and what we can do in the future. What is needed in your field of study or in your field of operation? What is needed by your colleagues or what is needed by others? For example, what do you think that festival directors, journalists, media people should do in order to basically obtain the most important result, that it is to give new talents and new musicians enough exposition, enough contact with the audience in order to ensure that they, whatever they want to do, their message, their art, their position, their ideas are gather exposition to as many people as possible. We have examples that we have been mentioned before in the discussions. The festivals, they are finding new formulas, information that it is changing very quickly and very deeply, as Peter just mentioned in his communication. So I would like to ask you, in each of your different capacities, what do you think we need and what do you think you can do to obtain these positive results that I am trying to delineate? Let's start with, in normal order, I think.
Is this normal?
Normal order. Yes, in the order that you said.
Okay, I think
I
you should do the women the first answer.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
I was very glad. I was very glad.
Just earned some brownie points there. The thing I was going to say is, what do you notice about on stage? I'm feeling slightly the odd one out here, and it really shouldn't be like this.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Valerie. We've had some really interesting discussions over the last couple of days, and when I first spoke yesterday, one of the topics I brought up was the issue of gender. Erling yesterday referred to it as one of the challenges in the academy, and I know from a lot of individual conversations that there are certainly issues for musicians, promoters, curators, audiences and everything that really seriously need to be addressed. And I think if anyone's taking a photograph down there of us all on stage, all the good-looking guys up here with me, there's an elephant in the room, and I just wonder whether I could give my couple of minutes to either Valerie or Bjørn, because apart from Ina's wonderful presentation this morning, female musicians haven't had much of a say. Could I offer the microphone to Bjørn or Valerie and give somebody a chance?
To speak about gender.
How
many hours?
Valerie's from the University of Belgium, Django, who spoke so well yesterday, comes from, and we've had only a brief conversation, but I think it's a great shame that you've come here to visit Trondheim and we haven't actually heard maybe something about your work. So if I can just donate my minutes to you, if that's okay with everybody else.
Yeah, please.
And my chair. No?
Thank you. Thank you, Fiona. I try to explain myself in English, which is not that easy to do for me. Thank you so much for passing me over the microphone, because it's really surprising. We talked about diversity yesterday, for example, that seems to be a big theme in everywhere in the world. Also, it's also a theme, or it should be one in the whole jazz scene. So what's surprising on it is when I'm looking around on congresses like that taking place all over Europe, all over the world, I always have been asked, are you writing the protocol? Are you the secretary? I'm head of a jazz department, maybe one of the few women leading a jazz department in Switzerland. And I'm not going to talk about the struggles I had in that kind of man's world, which is still taking place like that. The other surprising thing is we're talking about diversity, and I looked around yesterday. All the people sitting on stage, they are between, let's say, 50 and 60 years old. Men. All quite a similar age. There are no women on stage except a few. They were playing their instruments yesterday, which is beautiful. Still rare. Talking of this, we have a 5% of women studying at our school in Switzerland, instrumentalists. The rest is clear, these are singers, well known. We are familiar with that facts. I'm just wondering about how do we involve more in education, musical education, to taking care of diversity in every sense. Diversity also means to me having, being open for the different vibe of female musician, not being that kind or attitude of being competitive or sportive. Sportive aspect is one of the big aspects, I think, from jazz musician, which has taken place for the last 40 years or 60 years. It's maybe time also to change the expectation to listen to music, getting different vibes and being open-minded for different expression also for female players, which is quite hard to do because we try to make them survive at our school in Bjørn for a long time. They have given up in the middle of being in a man's world, having joking around, sexistic jokes taking, not being respected. So a few of them, they really had to left school after a while because they couldn't stand it anymore. What I'm talking about is why are not more people involved in panels like that? Younger ones, women, female, listen to their voices also. Concerning having like a big congress would be a chance to give them a voice. Also their kind of view concerning education, for example. We all are trying to drop on them our experience. But why are we not listening to them and having their own speeches, how they feel about their education here? So they are missing a few things, and most of it, Fiona told it already, I'm looking around here, sorry. That can't be the future. I mean, and I would really like to challenge congresses that they are aware of this question and try to involve more female people.
Don't forget non-whites also. I mean,
yeah, non-whites also. Yeah, just everything. But just let's start with a simple thing: having more males, females, please, involved, and young people. And yeah, that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about diversity. And a bit astonished, and after all these years spending on congresses, a bit annoyed. Thank you very much.
I'm a little embarrassed to be here, actually, at this point. And it's true. You know, I mean, speaking from a Canadian perspective, I mean, we can look and say that there are some actually tremendous female musicians, Ingrid and Christine Jensen being a couple of really good examples. But, you know, it's funny at All About Jazz, you know, we get criticized because we don't cover enough traditional jazz. We get criticized because we cover too much traditional jazz. We've been criticized because we don't cover enough black musicians. We've been criticized because we don't cover enough European musicians. The whole issue of diversity is an ongoing problem, and I honestly don't know what the solution is other than being just open to the concept that, I mean, one of the things about our editorial policies, we draw absolutely no lines. I mean, the fact that the majority of the music that we have covered is by white musicians is not by design, it's because that's the music that gets sent to people to be reviewed. So I suppose the only thing is, aside from having a level playing field where you say there is not going to be any lines drawn, is I guess making a concerted effort to try and ensure that more coverage goes to a broader perspective. And, you know, for myself, my way of dealing with that is, as a Canadian and a guy who's been raised in the North American thing, is also to do a lot of work over here. But the only thing I wonder about, and I'll say this again as a Canadian, because, you know, we have bilingualism issues. And in the 60s, Lester Pearson, one of our prime ministers, instituted like a quota system to ensure that, you know, in the federal government, there was an equal or a proportionate percentage of Anglophone and Francophone in order to address language issues, and that, you know, and it didn't really work because trying to actually create an empirical playing field invariably means that you don't really need. In the Canadian government, at one point in time, it became pretty much a known that, you know, if you were more qualified on Anglophone, chances are you would not get the job to somebody who was less qualified on Francophone. And I'm digressing, but I guess the thing is, the answer is, I don't really know beyond creating a context where the field is level and doing what you can do to encourage people to come from a diverse perspective. You know, when I was at Jazz Ahead, you know, we do have far too few women writers. I met a couple of women writers from England, and we're now talking about bringing them aboard and having them write for the site. So, I mean, I guess from my perspective, it's just more a matter of trying to be conscious of it and to try and just pay attention to ensure that you are not inhibiting it. I don't know. That's all I can say, I'm afraid.
Well, there are many things that I could talk about here, but since this issue of gender came up, I will address only that, because I think it's very important, and I'm embarrassed, as you are, that we are not more women on the panel. In February, the Ministry of Culture in Norway asked for some suggestions how to start working on this issue. Of course, this is much bigger than the cultural, the Ministry of Culture. I mean, it should be education, it should be lots of departments, ministries involved. What I was asked to do by the Norwegian Jazz Forum was to talk about education and higher level education. And this is what I recommended. What can higher education do? Because the problem is not on our level. It's about recruitment. I mean, there are problems on our level too, of course, in the sense that there are, we have to come up with certain ways of dealing with the problem, but the main problem is recruitment. So, I'll come back to that. These are the recommendations. What can higher education do? Direct measures are: 1, recruiting campaign towards female applicants. Scrutinize the established criteria of quality, the quality criteria in auditions, and trying to, I'm translating from Norwegian, trying to find the qualities that women may possess and that is not valued enough. And then third, quotation. I really believe in quotation. Even though lots of people will say quotation makes those quoted, is that right, feel bad about themselves. They're not really good, they're just brought in because of their gender. And the other side would say that this would reduce quality and thereby we won't have that good an education. That's why I think we should look at the quality criteria, which is what Valerie in a way addressed, this kind of competitive way of thinking about making music. It's music, it's not sports. Indirect measures are, and this is addressing the lower education, helping those who work for more music in schools in general to get more music and more what I call generative real-time musicians, pedagogues, because that's a big, big, big lack. We have all the, I'll come back to that. Help them with good justification and moral support, good justification for why they have to have music. Create good female role models and be able to employ women as pedagogues and teachers and educators. 3, the INI pedagogy, instrument, notation, interpretation, which permeates all music learning of children and young. In Norway we have 2 very distinct exceptions from that, and they're not a part of the public teaching system. They are private. One is run by a former student from Trondheim. His name is Erling. He started something called the Improbase. And it's the Voss Jazz School, where John Taylor, not the John Taylor that we all know, but another John Taylor, gets fantastic results, even from young people, and especially has been especially successful with women. The INI pedagogy is no good pedagogy to learn to express yourself with your own music in real time, which is what signifies jazz. And what I said yesterday is repeated here, that I think that, I don't know if this is true, but I really believe that. And that is that women tend to wind up in leisure activities that are much more organized, which means that they'll be exposed to people that are, to adults that can play in the way we're talking, so they'll never learn it. It's just by accident that happens. So I think that this is a structural measure in order to get more women in. And so this pedagogy has to be developed. Again, like I said yesterday, it's all about pedagogy. How do we learn, and how do we get the teachers that learn the right way? Yes. And the last point, I mean, these are really thought through recommendations, so I think they could be useful. Develop the generative, real-time music teaching as a subject through research and to make methods available. And that's it. So let's hope the cultural ministry passes that on to the Ministry of Education, and that, of course, the Norwegian Jazz Forum, whom I'm representing when I write this, will follow it up. Did you like it?
Guilty. No, I'm sorry. It's easy to say these things. It's easy to say these words, but they're only words. If I can order, maybe put these things in order. I can offer an explanation, or some people would think it's an excuse. But one of the things I said earlier was that it seems to me the great achievement of black American jazz musicians was to bring improvisation back into the mainstream of Western music. Now, black American society, however uncomfortable we may be with it, is not exactly gender neutral. It's indeed the general feeling is of a highly patriarchal kind of society, and I think to a certain extent we're the prisoners of history. We're living with that. But that's no reason why it should be like that in the future, so I hope very much that this sort of thing will become less and less in the future.
I don't know. I don't really have any thoughts about the subject. Basically, I play with the people that I like to play with. Of course, I see I wouldn't call it a problem, but I see that there are more guys playing that music than there are girls or women. I feel everything that I can say about that will just come out wrong. Because there probably are a lot of things that I don't know that much about, which is basically, which maybe can explain the fact that it is like that. You mentioned the history, and of course that's what it is, but I don't think I'm going to spend time sitting here babbling about things that I don't know anything about, so I'm just going to give Bugge the microphone.
Yeah, well, I mean, the issue should actually be addressed to the arranger of this conference, that it's too few minutes. So, but anyhow, having seen the students at the Royal Academy in Oslo, having seen the conservatory here, there's quite a lot of girls and very talented ones. I had the pleasure to see two amazing drummers and at least one piano player girls yesterday, so I have no fear of that actually. But it is true, it's of course been a kind of a men's world, the jazz thing, but it's changing. I mean, as society is changing. I'm kind of a little bit worried about the absence of non-whites. I mean, I think that's a cultural problem. I think it's because we get adopted so much in jazz, particularly from other cultures, because improvisation is a huge part of a lot of traditional music, from Central Asian music, Gypsy music, African music. And I think that could be a really, really important thing to incorporate in studies like these. You know, you can learn, like, just to experience playing with other type of instruments, experience other type of rhythms. I know some people here has been to Gambia to do some drum lessons, which has been amazing. I can be sure of. And so these things are very, very important. Another thing I'm missing is the voice of the young people. I would really love to hear some of you students, young guys, how you see your own future in the music. How do you see your role? What are you going to do? What's your plans? I would love to hear it, so if someone would like to come up, that would be great.
The audience. I'm just a writer. I can put my hands up and say I'm clean. I've written biographies of Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald and taken every opportunity to write about people like Maria Schneider, lesser known people like Mary Lou Williams, Mary Hyman's and all that kind of thing. There's not an awful lot I can do to change anything. So, what was your original question, Francesco?
Got lost in the shop.
Got lost in it, yes. Okay, so I'll hand over.
I don't know which of the people I am representing, but I feel guilty because I am part of the committee that has arranged this. We have four men that arranged this. Aksdal is there, and Erling and Peter. So we have to apologize for being not clever enough to deal with this gender question. So that's nothing more to say, but we have to learn from it. And that's it. For me, representing the university, the musicology, and also as a jazz musician, I think the most important thing is that we realize that music is not a thing. Music is an activity that Erling is talking about is happening in real time. And that's very little attention about just this face-to-face action that can bring green, yellow, red, black, whatever people together and create at the first moment you meet, because you share a common knowledge. Let's take some time to feel comfortable to do this, but I think in the education and in the kindergarten and from early on, people should have this experience of expressing themselves in a collective way, to be educated, to be democratic, to use a dangerous word, but I think this art form in all its forms represents some deep, deep knowledge, way back in history. And we need to address this special way of communicating. Words does things more problematic. And I think what we hear by the young players and also the older players, there's something that can't be expressed in words. If it could be, the music would be will not have no art, I think. So I will end my little speech here with using a black man's saying. Baba Tunde Olatunji, he played with, he was a Nigerian master drummer, and he went to New York in the 50s and played with Coltrane and also I think Charlie Parker. About that? Good. No, well, he had a saying that I think real expresses this real-time experience when you play together. He says, yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. What about today? Today is a present. No, today is a gift. Sorry. That's why we call it the present.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And yeah, please.
Thank you, Bugge, for the question. I'm in the second year at the academy, and I play drums. And I'm very lucky to be here. But I know I am here because I am good too, not only because I am this female instrumentalist. And that's because I have great teachers and mentors and good role models around me. And that I've been lucky enough that I'm from Sweden, and this dialogue has come a long way. So even 5 years ago, I met older women who one played drums, and many played instruments, and they were something different than other. I felt something different inside of me. Meeting them when I was 15, 16, it felt like another kind of resonance. And that's the problem. And I think it's going to be the solution. And it's coming, it's going to take time. It's going to be more women who's going to inspire other women and men to be themselves and not just jazz musicians, or just being musicians and being themselves. And I have faith in that. And you don't have to feel like blame or something, but you just have to be open and see different kind of qualities. Different kind of qualities. There are different kind of qualities and different kind of genie. It's not only logical and masculine way of solutioning problems. And we are just, everybody is flowering with each other when we're not one homogenic mass. And so I'm positive, but I'm critical also, because, yeah, it's reality. but I cannot only be more than just be me and play drums.